Okay, Marek, the stage is yours.
Hey guys, hi all. Terribly sorry for changes in schedule. Let me share my screen.
Yep, we see it, I guess.
Perfect. Okay, let's go. So I will coordinate my demo with some slides just to make sure everything is in the right order. So my project name is Mac, and this is the midpoint demo for zkIgnite cohort 3, and I'm Marek. So let's get it started. So I will start by showing you a list of the milestones and divide them into midpoint part and final part. So I'm basically going to demo and present this, what I did in the first part of the grant. So the first thing is wizard mode contract creation. So if you just go to my app, before I show you the wizard mode, I would like to also mention that if you are familiar with my app, you might notice that things look a little bit different. That's because I updated Next.js, not to the most recent version, but to the previous most recent version. So it changed how components look a little bit, so gave it a little bit of fresh look. So let's connect to Berkeley. Shows we get those toast notifications now, so we know what happened. Just copy the password, the Aura wallet, let's connect the wallet. Let's also make sure we are in the Berkeley network here, not the DevNet. Good. So we go to, so wait, what am I doing? Wizard mode, okay. Let's start with the wizard mode. So if you go to ZK app new, so this is to create a new ZK app. If you've seen the previous version of my app, you would be overwhelmed with a giant page with so many entries, and it was so confusing and hard to tell what is doing what. So there was this idea it was suggested many times to me to make sort of a wizard so that people do like just one step at a time and it's not so confusing. So I decided to do it during this cohort, and I made this. So I kind of didn't do wizard. Instead of wizard, I did carousel because it serves the same purpose as wizard. So users can still see only one step at a time. So if you open deployment and change to participants, like the deployment will hide. So it's less overwhelming. It has same purpose as wizard. So you see only one step at a time. But unlike with wizard, you do not need to create any custom component. You do not need to have multiple pages. So there's already a carousel component that can be used. So that's what I used, and that's pretty much the same thing. So the view is splitted into like those sections. So you don't really need to do everything at the same time and be an expert and get overwhelmed with this big page. Now it's just multiple steps. So let's just fill it up. So generating, this is the public key of the new contract. This is the private key is blurred so that someone doesn't take a photo of your screen, but you can copy and paste it. Participants, so you can put some Mina addresses here. So these are the participants of the smart contract. Contract description. The contractor is going to, I don't know, like share an emoji, whatever. Amounts, so you can put some Mina amounts here. It's basically the same thing as before, more or less. I mean, I did change the units a little bit and descriptions just to review, but the most important change is the like one step at a time. And this is going to be next milestone. So I will pause here and move there. So make it possible to copy ZK app private key during Macpack export. So here's the thing. Let's keep those deadlines for now. put some outcome descriptions. So this is just to justify the policy. It's not really the subject of this milestone. So let's just do next. And I click on export, finalize. And this is the contract I just created. So if someone copies this string, it's possible to import exactly the same contract. So this is how I bypass the need of off-chain storage. You can just share those strings. But here's what I added. Now you can copy the private key. So this is the same private key that I just generated. So before it was not possible. So basically, if you create a new contract, you had to be the one who deploys it, because the deployment transaction has to be signed with private key of the zk app address, corresponding private key. So it was forcing the contract creator to be also the person who deploys it. You could have exported, but if someone imported it, could not deploy because the private key was not shown on this page. So that's what I added. Basically, you can see this private key, you can copy it. And if you back up your contract, you can also back up the private key. And you don't need to remember to do it while creating the contract. So this is the second milestone, just modifying this export page. Display time estimates in time of addition to current block numbers. So this is actually another thing. So if you go to zk app interact, there is the thing that before it was just this. So you can deposit between this block height and this block height. You can declare success of the contract between this block height, blockchain length, sorry, and this blockchain length. But the thing is, like, we don't really reason in blockchain lengths. You know, if you ask me, hey, what's the blockchain length of Berkeley network right now? I'll probably not remember, not know. But if you ask me what's the time, I will say, yeah, sure, it's 2:31. So people naturally reason in terms of regular time, not the blockchain length, but the smart contracts reason in terms of blockchain lengths, because this is like a value that is available on chain and can be used as you know, in the constraints of the contract. So I basically made this thing so you can actually change units in entire app. So by default, it's this. If you want to know exactly when you can deposit, you look at blockchain lengths. But if you want to more or less have an intuition when can you deposit, you can change the time estimates, and you can see this. So it's more human friendly, let's say, because you can also see it in regular units. So you can do it during the interaction, but also during the contract creation. So if we just close this contract and create a new one, and if you take a look at phases durations, look at this. There is a blockchain, maybe white on yellow is not the most visible, but this is the blockchain length. And if I adjust those values, it will also adjust the estimates of the real time. Of course, these are just estimates. If you look at the Poisson distribution, like the block time should be like 3 minutes. So the more blocks you wait, the more uncertainty you have when exactly it will happen. So if you have like 10,000 blocks of waiting here, you can't really be sure it will happen on this moment up to, you know, every second. That's the inaccuracy of the block times. But you can more or less know which date it will be, which year. So you don't accidentally deploy a contract that will, you know, finalize in 5 years or something just because you know, went one order of magnitude up or something like this. So the display time estimates in time in addition to current block numbers. So no more only block numbers, also time estimates now. So this is the third milestone. Now I will show you the RFCs I've written. So first, a little bit of motivation why I'm doing it. So I don't know how familiar you are with this zk app, but this is a pretty complicated zk app that makes zk apps. So there is a arbitration protocol behind it that makes it that you have some predefined rules in the contract, and based on the values you fill out in this form, you can enforce certain interactions between participants of the network. So actually, to be able to make a smart contract using just a web form, I had to make some compromises and make some decisions, like predefine some scenarios. And the thing is, I start to forget what I did, basically. So I made initial version in 2022, and I'm no longer able to fully answer all the questions. If someone reaches me out and asks me, hey, what's the contractor failure penalty? I have to think for 5 minutes to remember, because it's pretty complicated and I did it a long time ago. So I found it harder and harder to actually work on it, and harder and harder to actually explain what it does. So for that reason, I decided to actually document it so that there is some sort of reference and I can take a look at it if I have doubts why I made certain choices, and also something I could show to someone. So these are the two important RFCs, the escrow protocol. Basically, I justified why I made this up and what kind of impact I expect it to have. And it's also kind of an introduction to what smart contracts and ZK apps are. But the real subject of this RFC is this technical level explanation, where actually all the formulas, all the types, all the values are being explained and justified why certain choices are made. Like, for example, these are the constraints that always have to be verified in order to make funds withdrawable from the contract. And I had to, like, writing this RFC was basically to, like, really self-audit everything, because they soon ZK apps go to mainnet, and I don't really want to risk someone's funds would be locked forever in a contract like this. So I prefer to have everything documented and audited, even if it's just me auditing my own work. But to be able to do it, first I need to review everything and document. So I written this very long document with technical description of everything and some links. So this is R1, right, RFC, about arbitration protocol. And another RFC is this one. It's about serialization, because if you guys recall, it's possible to actually export contracts as strings like this. So I sort of create a standard that allows you to do it, and I documented it in this RFC. So there is, like, worst case number of bytes, best case number of bytes, which methods have to be executed in which order, how to serialize to fields, how to serialize to bytes, how to compute the Poseidon hash of the entire contract, etc., etc. So everything is documented here. And also, while working on those two RFCs, I noticed some things that I anticipated to be there are actually not implemented. So I will list them later. So these are the two RFCs. And these are the new milestones which I sort of had to add. I already started to work on them. So first of all, kind of a stupid thing, you noticed that I have a milestone that says that you need to be able to export the private key, but there is no milestone that you need to be able to import private key. So that's one thing I noticed while working on this, and it's actually already done. So let's demo it. So if you just go to ZK app import, you can paste this or this. I prepared one with valid private key and invalid private key. So let's just import this one. You can paste this and you can totally import it. So you don't need to give private key to be able to import. The thing is, if you import it without private key, it will only allow you to interact with this contract. It will not allow you to do anything which requires private key. But now you are also able to import with private key, which is something that requires you can also, which is something that is required, for example, for deployment. So let's just do it again. And let's provide invalid private key here. And it will complain. So inside of this contract, there is a public key that is expected. And the private key you provide here has to correspond to it. So there is also a validation mechanism in it. But let's just put the valid private key instead. And this should work without complaint. Yes, it was fine. So the contract imported in this way can also be deployed. So now the party who creates the contract doesn't necessarily need to be the party who deploys the contract, because it is possible to export with the private key, and it is possible to import also the private key. So another milestones I noticed I have to add is, if you look at this, I was actually, the way I designed it, I expect there to be a random nonce, just some random field value, just to prevent pre-image attack. And it's actually not there. So either I assumed that just having the contract private key is sufficient to prevent pre-image attack, but just in case, I think I will add a random field. I haven't actually decided. Maybe I should consult with someone, but I've written it in new milestone, just in case. So this is an extra milestone number 2. And actually, there is a huge bug, which I haven't noticed before, which is very dangerous. So if you look at the, now I have RFCs, so I can show you what's the problem. Actually, there are different outcomes of the smart contract. So outcomes are, let me just find it. Deposited, success, failure, cancel, and unresolved. So actually, I made this whole app and I forgot about this one. So I added it while writing this RFC. So basically, if all those deadlines pass and there is still Mina locked in the contract will never allow you to withdraw. So this is a money lost forever, basically. There was no mechanism for, specifying the withdrawal rules in case if nobody cares and all the deadlines pass. So it's a huge issue. So I documented how it should be. So the RFC is what I expect the whole thing to be. And I added an extra milestone, basically to add this unresolved outcome in the whole app, so that it's possible to predict what happens if people don't interact and the contract just gets abandoned. So it allows this unresolved outcome would allow you to specify who can withdraw and how much, basically, in such case. So some links. So there's I made a separate repository for the RFCs, request for comments. Reason for that is, if you guys review my code, I don't want to mix the docs and code. It will be more convenient for reviews. Like not artificially make it look like there's more comments or something, especially that with the docs, sometimes there's a lot of comments because there are typos and stuff like this. The app is deployed, of course, feel free to use it with Berkeley network, and there's this main repo which remains unchanged. So this is basically my demo. I'm ready to answer some questions if you have any.
All right. Thanks, Marek. Any questions for Mac? Seems no questions. Thanks again for the presentation, and
Thank you, guys.
good luck for the next weeks. I'll stop the recording and start a new one. Then next project is Atlas Path.